eat a piece of cake. Tell me that it's not like super exciting to eat the cake, and then halfway through you're like, oh, what what have I done? And then you eat like another one because you're like chasing that high. Same with beer or cocktails or Tito's and Club. What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well today. We're talking alcohol today because happy National Hangover Day for celebrating New Year's Day. For many years, 15 plus or minus years, I was the one nursing a hangover, watching Beer Fest on Comedy Central back in the day for National Hangover Day. So we're talking alcohol today, and I don't say it from a place of like, don't do it if you don't want to, and on a pedestal or a throne or anything like that. I'm saying it because I was the last guy to expect to say, like, "Don't have a beer and don't celebrate and don't have a good time drinking," because I did it for many years and now decided just that's not what I'm gonna do anymore. But kind of hit me when a buddy said, "Hey, man, it's awesome that you're getting into all this health and wellness stuff. 10 years ago, you would have been like, yeah, shut up, dude, grab a beer." So, anyways, some things that are, I think, lesser known about alcohol to make that connection, because a lot of times we don't make the connection. I didn't make the connection. Like, oh, my sleep sucks. Oh, I'm lethargic. I'm unmotivated. All those things. So we're going to talk a little bit about some under recognized things in alcohol and how it affects the body, starting with the brain, because for a lot of us, I think it's important to be able to make decisions and not have extra anxiety about things. And it does have a correlation specifically to the prefrontal cortex in the brain, which is your essentially decision making area and the higher level of like top down stuff and choices that you make, and specifically in the gray matter, that they saw shrinkage of gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, which is neurons in the brain that are specific with memory, learning, decision making, and reasoning. I feel like there's quite a few people can attribute some of those things, like being reasonable. Anyways, it also affects the hippocampus, which is primarily used for memory formation. So you look at like, okay, have you ever blacked out before? It's because the alcohol is directly affecting the hippocampus, therefore not allowing for the brain to create new memory formation, which is, that in itself is like quite a deleterious effect and dramatic effect. Like, holy cow, you're not able to record memories because of the inhibition in the hippocampus because of the alcohol. And another thing we'll talk about shortly is the effect that it has on dopamine and reward and motivation system, but it affects the nucleus accumbens, where motivation, pleasure, and habit are formed via dopamine signaling. So those are some big other kind of woe factors. The potential of making decisions specifically under stress. So when you have shrinkage of the prefrontal cortex, which is growing in many young people during puberty and throughout life, in some men, it's up to age 25 or maybe even beyond. But the prefrontal cortex is like a decision making hub. And when you shrink it, it makes it more challenging and more worrisome to make decisions. So in any job in like the professional setting, I don't want to prune the landscape to make it more challenging for me to make decisions. So I don't want to shrink my prefrontal cortex. And in some MRIs that they did with regular alcohol consumption, it was up to 50%, which is a pretty massive number. Not only that, it affects the amygdala, and the amygdala is like the smoke alarm system in your brain, and causing more anxiety and fear of things to come and worry essentially by exciting that amygdala more often, therefore leading to a regression back to drinking alcohol because of the anxiety and worry. So you drink again to calm down because it affects GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Not only that, it affects dopamine. So dopamine is your motivation kind of drive neurotransmitter. And they saw in studies that it would, before the consumption of alcohol, dopamine would be high. And then after one drink, after two drinks, maybe three drinks, that dopamine would steadily decrease because you're chasing that euphoric dopamine buzz. And once it comes, it's kind of like starts draining out, leading to like a lesser desire. And that's not only with alcohol, that's really any kind of drug, alcohol, I mean, food, highly processed food with a sugar, like eat a piece of cake. Tell me that it's not like super exciting to eat the cake. And then halfway through, you're like, oh, what have, what have I done? And then you eat like another one because you're like chasing that high. Same with beer or cocktails or Tito's and Club. So next time we're down in our cocktails thinking it's great, it's like, you know, what are we doing? Anyways, point being, it shrinks the prefrontal cortex substantially, and the gray matter in that prefrontal cortex increases the function of the amygdala. So, setting that smoke alarm off anxiety. So, in a stressful situation, you're more likely to not be able to make a clear, concise decision. Then you're going to worry more and make the situation even worse. So, if you're looking to have like the most beneficial brain function because you want to be a good individual or better at your job or you work in a high stress environment, or not only that, you just like have decisions that you want to make that are logical. Alcohol is going to deter that and then lead to going back to drinking to find joy, to get that dopamine rush, to relieve that anxiety. And the next effect that's pretty important to realize is the effect on weight loss and how the body processes the alcohol. So the liver metabolizes it into acetaldehyde, which is a toxic chemical to the body. So before anything else, it's going to prioritize getting that out of the system. So if you eat anything alongside of that, or calories that come in typically a carbohydrate form in a beer or mixed drink with a ton of sugar, the body's going to prioritize getting rid of that toxin from the alcohol, the acetaldehyde, before any other calorie. So it's going to store every other carbohydrate, protein, macronutrient is going to get stored because it's saying, I need to get this out of me. Everything else doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it to the side. So then you get that on top of like potentially ordering the XL Supreme pizza, which is an excess of calories in itself. The body is not only going to have that excess of calories, it's going to prioritize the alcohol getting processed out of it. So storing all of that for excess energy. So it's very challenging to lose weight. Not impossible, but it's going to up the ante in losing weight challenge if you're drinking alcohol. And has a direct correlation on blood glucose levels. So interestingly, if you're drinking just hard alcohol that typically doesn't have calories alongside it, technically, it will lower blood glucose levels, leading to hypoglycemia. Actually, quite dangerous for certain types of people. Diabetics, it's definitely not advantageous to lower blood sugar if you don't have the control of insulin and glucagon. But in any case, the other insulin's a hormone. So the other hormones it affects, testosterone, which is an important one. Chronic use, which really isn't that much, drinking leads to a decrease in like 20 to 50% of testosterone levels. And some studies show that it affects the Leydig cell sensitivity in the testicles. Therefore, the testicles can't intake luteinizing hormone, which is the precursor that goes down to the Leydig cells. Then the Leydig cells produce testosterone. So if you're desensitizing these, allowing for less uptake of LH, then you get less testosterone overall. Alternatively, it increases the aromatization of estrogen. So in men, that's bad, leading to like man boobs and gynecomastia and higher estrogen levels, and in women, a higher excess of estrogen isn't necessarily good either because that can lead to irregular cycles and potential complications with ovulation and all that because the body's always trying to be balanced. So if you're increasing estrogen, it could lead to more drastic mood via like serotonin overproduction. In any case, it's not going to be really great for the endocrine system. Also, with sleep, other hormones come into play, like growth hormones, primarily released during your sleep cycles in a pulsing rhythm. Majority of your growth hormone is released at night while you sleep, so it disrupts sleep pretty significantly, lessening the time of deep sleep and different stages of sleep, specifically REM as well, and you're getting more interruptions during your sleep, not allowing for that full recovery, leading to increased inflammation, lesser of the growth hormone we talked about. The blood alcohol content gets lowered, it's processing out, and causes more disruptions in sleep patterns, leading to less REM, therefore leading to less advantageous restful sleep. And that's leading to grogginess in the morning. Like it's harder cognitively to function. There's increases of anxiety when you get bad sleep. Your body actually starts craving different bad foods more, and you're more likely to give in, leading to, exacerbated weight gain in combination with perhaps the bad food that was consumed with a binge, on top of the body trying to process out the alcohol before anything else. And you just have a constant storm of not great things. But, you know, some people do have the occasional drink, one or two, that actually helps down regulate some of the anxiety and stress, leading to more calming. So that's not all bad all the time. But if it's a continuous thing that is just in excess, and we don't make the correlation to why can't I lose weight? Why are my hormones so bad? Why am I so anxiety all the time? What's the cause of me not being able to make logical, effective decisions in the moment, especially under stress? Then these are things not to overlook. So, coming from someone who has consumed alcohol since like middle school, and is like 15 plus years, and has tried to quit for various like events and whatnot, like trying to make goals, and then ultimately went back to drinking. Kind of the final decision was ultimately it's not making anything more advantageous, and I don't like that it is inhibiting my ability to make better decisions and more logical. And I didn't like that it was potentially inhibiting the ability to make more logical decisions in a stressful situation. And that could just be like even in traffic, or having a disagreement with someone about the politics of things at Thanksgiving, whatever, heightens your fight or flight. And also the dopamine aspect of like motivation. If you have a few drinks and you're wondering like, why do I feel so unmotivated the next day? I didn't even drink that much. It's inhibiting that dopamine response and can be irreversible. So therefore you produce and are less sensitive to dopamine neurotransmitters for the rest of your existence, because you've completely desensitized or downregulated the ability for dopamine to have its effect on motivation and drive. Not super interesting for, I would say, a lot of people that are trying to, better themselves or become something or create something or just be proactive. You wouldn't want to remove one of the top functions, neurotransmitters in the body for that. So, all things to consider. And if you have ever decided, okay, I want to quit drinking, like I'm with you. And hopefully, talking more about the effects in the body and making that connection, then if you truly want to remove drinking or at least downregulate the amount of cocktails consumed, here's a good reference point and some data for you. Like, subscribe, share. Blog is on solutionstowellness.org. Have a good one.